Have you ever wanted to fulfill your fantasy of being a stealth bomber? Yeah, that's Jade. How about a Warframe that can provide huge team buffs, fly, nuke rooms with red crits, all while being incredibly tanky? Yeah, that's Jade. After revisiting Jade, it is safe to say that this Warframe is absolutely insane. Since I have last played her, she has received so many indirect buffs from all the new things added into the game. And I have some crazy builds for you today that you are going to love. And if you have forgotten about Jade, I can assure you, you might just pick her up after this video. Let's start off with the usuals, going over her passive and her abilities. Jade has 2 aura slots, which means you actually have more mod capacity than any other Warframe in the game, allowing you to get about plus 28 capacity from both auras, sometimes more if you're using Steel Charge or Power Donation. Her passive ties into her first ability, Light's Judgement, and her fourth ability, Glory on High. This makes Jade take flight. If enemies walk into Light Judgment's radius, or if you have your fourth ability active and you're using the exalted weapon Glory, when you apply Judgment, enemies have plus 50% damage vulnerability lasting for 10 seconds. It also has some other interactions with her kit too, which we'll go over later on. Jade's first ability is called Light's Judgment. You throw down a plume, this creates a little radius or little ring. Enemies that are within the radius when you throw it down or they walk into it will then burn for heat damage per half second. It will also heal allies for 8% of their maximum health per second. You can have up to 5 Light's Judgments at one time, and damage effects stack on enemies that are in multiple worlds, which we'll go over in a moment. This is the main way to spread Jade's passive for Judgment, and it also allows you to detonate the enemies with her fourth ability. Jade's Judgment is the augment. This will send down a Jade Light Xmas beam on enemies. It has a spawn chance of 5% at base, which is increased with ability strength. Duration is affected by the ability duration stat, of course, but here's the thing with this augment. It works exactly how Jade Xmas beams work on you. For every tick of damage, the damage is doubled. It will deal heat damage every half second, meaning the longer the duration, the more damage you do. This augment is an exponential augment, which is insane. So the more duration you have, the more damage you do. It is a little bit slow though, I will be honest. If you're comparing how Jade can actually just nuke things with her fourth ability and her other kit as a whole, this augment can be very powerful, but also can be a bit slow. I do think that this is better for your much tougher targets like Acolytes, Babao Xmas units in general, all the tougher targets in Warframe. Jade's second ability is called Symphony of Mercy, a 3-part ability allowing you to cycle between 3 buffs. Power of 7, which increases your ability strength, capping at 150% bonus strength from Power of 7 if you manage to reach 600% ability strength through Jade, which is crazy. Next is Deathbringer. This increases your weapon damage, and this is an additive bonus like Serration. Spirit of Resilience is the third buff. This regenerates your shields by 10% per second at base, which flows into overshields. And it also reduces your shield recharge delay by 10%, scaling with ability strength. I will say though, Spirit of Resilience is very powerful for survivability. Like if you pair this with Fast Deflection, for example, it is very difficult for you to die. When you cast Symphony of Mercy, you can cycle between the different buffs on the fly while you have it active, so you don't need to recast it the whole time, like most other abilities in the game that have cycle potential or cycle means, basically. Because of this allows you to easily snapshot your other abilities on the fly. If you don't know what that means, it basically means increasing the amount of ability strength for that specific cast. If you need to give your third ability more strength, then you can just quickly switch to Power of 7, get that bonus strength, and then switch back to the Deathbringer bonus if you want more weapon damage. If you kill an enemy affected by Judgment, you extend Symphony of Mercy's duration by 2 seconds. The duration is capped at twice the modded duration, which means, again, you don't really need to worry about this ability when it's casted because you can just keep the duration up, unless you gain more ability strength with something like Molt Augmented or Growing Power, so any other snapshot potential outside of Power of 7 itself, if that makes sense. Her second is very powerful and very useful for your teammates too. Ophanim Eyes is her third, one of my favorite abilities in the game. Cast this ability to create a cone in front of you. You will then deal heat damage, but you won't actually apply heat damage just yet. You can slow enemies up to a maximum of 90% with enough ability strength, all while armor stripping and shield stripping enemies by 10% per second at base. When you do remove their defenses, the enemy will then receive a guaranteed heat proc. Scaling this with ability strength acts as a huge crowd control beast of an ability and a great way to defense strip. This is a very, very powerful ability, and when you put it on other warframes, it is even better for some other warframes kits, because this is her subsume ability. If you gaze upon allies who are downed, it will then halt their bleed out timer, and they will gradually gain revive progress until they're fully revived. So again, huge support potential. Remember, you can snapshot the ability strength for Ophanim with power of 7 from her second ability. Moving on to her last ability, Glory on High. This is Jade's fourth, allowing you to take flight. Here you can move at 100% increased movement speed, moving around as per normal, but you cannot bullet jump. You can dash in midair, and you can do all that stuff, go up and down. Pretty much how the Archwing feels, except you don't blink. While you're in this form, you gain innate 50% damage reduction with 143% ability strength. Your movement speed can be increased with the respective mods, but here is a little trick for you though. You see, you can speed up your dodge speed in mid-air by equipping Amalgam Barrel Diffusion on your secondary weapon. In this form, you also gain access to Glory, which is her exalted weapon that is coded as a pistol too. If you double up on the Amalgam mods, you can get a ton of dodge speed. Pretty cool. And lots of fun to add more movement when in this form, because if you use both these mods, I can assure you, you're going to be having insane mobility. When you are in flight, you can benefit from mods like Aerodynamic and Aviator to gain more damage reduction when you're flying. Okay, that covers all the flying part and moving around. Let's talk about Glory, her exalted weapon. Oh boy, okay, this is where it gets fun. Glory is an automatic exalted weapon that, like I mentioned, is coded as a secondary. It deals pure heat damage at base. Its main fire has a 2-meter explosion radius, which is affected by fulmination for more range. But Glory has an alternate fire. When enemies are affected by Judgement via her first ability, or by merely shooting enemies with Glory's main fire, because remember, if you shoot enemies with your main fire with Glory, you have a 10% chance to apply Judgement. You can then detonate these enemies that are affected by the debuff. If enemies are affected by Light's Judgement, her first ability, the alternate fire does an extra 1.5 times explosion radius, which means bigger pops. You will deal a bunch of heat damage exploding in a 4-meter radius, which is not affected by fulmination, unfortunately. Here's the catch though, it costs energy every time you ult fire. It is important to know that Glory's ult fire is not affected by base damage mods or sources, Deathbringer, weapon damage bonuses, and multi-shot. However, there is a but here, and this ties into Glory in its entirety. This is coded as a secondary, even the ult fire, meaning it is affected by things like crit and crit damage. For example, the ult fire of Glory is affected by secondary Innovate, which allows it to hit red crits. Not all the time though, to be fair, but the fact that this works is crazy. Obviously, things like raw, viral, armor stripping will increase this damage drastically. Not only that, because it's a secondary and it's an ability, it means you can use things like Arcane Impetus, you can use Arcane Hotshot, anything that requires an ability to do something, for example Archon mods, the list goes on, will then work with Glory because it's an ability and it's a secondary weapon. This right here is what makes Jade so incredibly powerful with her exalted weapon. The nice thing about the main fire is it's an infinite ammo exalt weapon that thrives off of good fire rates. I will admit I do tend to focus on fire rate for her exalted weapons, but you don't need to go all in as much as I have. Okay, that covered her abilities. If I could ask you, smash that like button and subscribe if you're enjoying the content. I really appreciate it, and it goes a long way for me. Thank you so much. Now, how do we go about playing Jade? It's actually very simple. She's incredibly tanky. She can nuke enemies with ease. The only thing that you need to keep an eye out for is utilizing the strength bonus from her second. If you want the most out of her 1, 3, and 4, be sure to cycle to the strength bonus just before you cast these abilities. She can get a little energy hungry if you have negative efficiency and if you're spamming Glory's ult fire like crazy. Remember, every time you ult fire, you use 25 energy. Staying in her fourth is pretty much a no-brainer, and as a no Helminth setup, it makes sense. It provides you with good mobility, innate 50% damage reduction, and a means to use her exalted weapon. Using her 1 to spread Judgement is a good idea and ties directly into her 4th. Ophanim is a cast and forget. The only abilities that you're generally focusing on when playing Jade is cycling between the different buffs of Symphony of Mercy and spamming Jade's 1, which is Light's Judgement. That's pretty much it. And then just recast the Phantom Eyes when you run out of the duration. How do we go about building her for Starchart players? If you're someone in the Starchart that wants to give Jade a try, honestly, she does not need a lot. She has so much inbuilt to her kit. The only thing that I will say though is energy sustain. This is a big one. Energy sustain is going to be very important for you. So you don't need a lot. You can put on aerodynamic if you have that aura, and you can put on some fast deflection, for example, and you should be good to go. The build would look something like this. You just need some energy, equilibrium, that should be good. And when you have more capacity, which you will because you have 2 aura slots, you can then put on streamline. If you have aviator, it's even more damage reduction. Honestly, this right here is all you need. You can fill in, for example, let's say you want to have the augment in, you can put on Jade's Judgement if you want to, and that pretty much fills a beginner setup for you right here. Arcanes or whatever you have available, you're not going to have too much in the star chart, but once you start building up some, then you can put that in there. When it comes to building her glory, her exalted weapon as a star chart player, this is all you need, starting with base damage, fire rate, and then you can mod for your elements and crit and all that stuff if you want to, and then get multi-shot if you have that. Again, very simple, basic mods. You don't need to go crazy. Jade will cheese the star chart with ease, so you don't really need to worry too much about having the perfect setup. Now, as we move into the steel pass section, I would actually like to speak about glory first, so that we can kind of go over how that goes, because that ties into what her builds or how you're going to build Jade. Especially if glory is all that you're going to be focusing on, depends on how you're going to build her. So starting off with the first setup as a steel pass setup, it would be an innovate build. This one by far is the best with Jade, because like I explained to you, innovate actually procs off of the explosions from the old fire, because it's technically a secondary that's busy doing it. Granted, you're not going to be getting red crits all the time, but the fact that you can do that is crazy. And you can start scaling the damage to insane heights as well. It also allows you to drop a certain mod or a specific mod, for example, like crit chance, allowing you to mod as a normal innovate setup. I would recommend Lethal Momentum, although she is going to be quite former hungry. If you don't have as much form or don't want to invest so much, you can just go no prime mods. You can kind of, make it more budget and do what you can. As you can see here, I have Amalgam Barrel Diffusion. I find Jade does more than enough damage as is. You can go Galvanized Diffusion instead if you feel like you're not doing enough damage or you'd like more multi-shot. It's up to you. Me personally, I love the dodge speed. It makes her feel so much better and so much quicker. You can go pure heat, you can go blast and anything like that. For example, I have a blast setup right here, which is pretty much the exact same thing, except I did put fulmination on, and this is what the setup looks like for a blast setup. It's quite satisfying, especially when you're adding the explosions from the old fire too. A Cascadia flare setup is just stock standard. It gets the job done. It's just pure damage increase and it will see you through. You can go Fortifier if you'd like to. If you don't have all these fancy arcanes, you can just go Merciless. That works too. You can choose whatever arcane you feel that you want to use and just build around that. Now, we're going to be talking about the Encumber setup. Now, this is going to tie in to a setup later on when I speak about Jade, but you can use secondary Encumber. You're not going to be doing as much flat damage as an Innovate or let's say a Cascadia Flare, for example, so you're not going to be killing as quick, but you are going to be able to use Arcane Impetus, which gives you a bunch of ability strength and efficiency, which helps Jade dramatically. More strength means more damage for Deathbringer. More efficiency means you can spam the old fire more and you can spam your one ability or your first ability more. I must say Encumber is pretty damn good, and this is what the setup would look like. You just need to worry about applying those status effects, which you do, and then you can build up Arcane Impetus. And that explains everything with regards to glory. Now we move on to the actual Jade builds. The thing is, Jade is quite diverse in how you build her, and the reason why I say this is because there are many ways to do it. You can go very high range so that you can have bigger explosions. You can go very high strength so that you can benefit from the huge increase from power of 7 or a huge Deathbringer bonus. It's very difficult for me to say this is the way to build her unless you get into the Helminth setups. As a no Helminth setup, I can just say to you this: if you want to use Jade's Judgement, which is the augment, you're going to want to use a lot of ability duration or get a lot of ability duration so that the Xmas beams stay around longer. Then you want to make sure that your efficiency or your energy sustain is good. Generally speaking, equilibrium with Flow should be good. And if you have something like Synth Deconstructor Companion with Fetch to absorb all the orbs, then you should be fine. When it comes to what the build would look like, this is something that I have opted for. We have Aerodynamic, which means more damage reduction. We have Aviator, more damage reduction. I've actually opted to take off Adaptation because I just felt like she didn't need it. You are already slowing down enemies with Ophanim Eyes, and you have a bunch of strength scaling through Power of 7 and also Molt Augmented. You're going to be slowing down enemies so quickly that you actually don't need to worry. I do have Fast Deflection on here. Again, this is incredibly powerful if you're using Spirit of Resilience because then it reduces your recharge delay, but it's not 100% needed. If you feel like you are dying, then use Fast Deflection. If you feel like you're not dying, then try it out without it. Just give it a try, basically. That's what I'm trying to say. Archon Vitality is very powerful here because we're going to be using Jade's Judgement. You'll be dealing heat procs. This will double the heat procs, which is going to further increase this augment's damage by a lot. So this whole setup that I have right here kind of ties everything in together. It allows you to have decent enough duration. It allows you to have a bit of everything so that you can just benefit from all or her entire kit in its entirety. In terms of the glory builds, if I have to suggest glory builds, it would probably be the Innovate one. That is like the main one to go for. You can then also, if you wanted to, use a secondary Encumber setup, maybe drop Augmented and go Impetus, which will then give you more ability strength and efficiency as well, which probably would be better, but I really like Innovate, so that's why I didn't go for it. I will say again, Arcane Velocity is absolutely huge and just makes her main fire feel so much better if you're going to be spamming her main fire. If you're not, don't really care about it too much, then you can use this for something or change it out for something else. Arcane Concentration might not be a bad idea because you're going to be using Jade's Judgment, giving you more ability duration, which means the light beams will deal much more damage because they last longer. And that pretty much covers a no Helminth setup. Now, before we go into the Helminth setups, which is the exciting part of Jade, which I'm so excited to show you or talk to you about, I do want to talk about some good things to pair with her. The first one, which is for any Warframe, let's be real, it's the Grimoire as a utility bonus or as just a means to get extra ability duration, extra ability strength, to snapshot some of her skills. You see, because Jade has a lot of cast and forget abilities, she benefits from snapshotting a lot. Even duration, even strength is the main thing, but duration also applies here. So if you use the right invocation mod and you snapshot her abilities, her kit is going to feel so much better. That is something that I quite appreciate about Jade. She's not super spammy, but at the same time, you have to manage a little bit, and the Grimoire just helps her dramatically. Then we have Amalgam Barrel Diffusion. I've already spoken about that. Whether you put that onto Glory or you put that on your secondary or the Grimoire, if you have it, you can opt to use that or not opt to use that. It's up to you. But because you're not going to be using your secondary, if you're using her fourth form the whole time, it just makes sense to do that because then you get an extra stat stick, you know. Another option is using the new Operator Arcanes, which allows you to get heat from your secondary, which will also apply to Jade's Glory, which allows you to deal more heat damage. It's a bonus. It's something that you can consider if you're going to be doing endurance runs with Jade. If you're going to be running for 30 minutes longer in certain missions and you want to maximize her damage, you can definitely use that. Next, we move to companions, or the companion side of things with Jade. I will say the Nautilus is huge with her because you can pull enemies in and you can benefit from, you know, a grouping mechanic, which allows the explosions to kind of overlap and join up on top of each other, which just maximizes. It's like popcorn. That's what it's like. Nautilus is incredibly powerful, very good option. You can also use a Panzervault Profiler. You can also use a Doriga Primer, which is the basic one. I personally use that one, but I will say I have been using Nautilus lately and holy crap, it works very well with Jade. And then we have the Archon Shards before we get to the Helminth Builds. I will say I opted for 2 casting speed and 3 strength shards. Or you can go duration shards if you wanted to. That is an option if you'd like to go for that. And I would say that's pretty much the best way to go about it. Especially if you're using Innovate, there's no real reason for you to maybe use Topaz Shards unless you're not using Innovate. If you're not using Innovate, you can use Topaz Shards to increase your critical damage for secondaries, or you can use Red Shards for secondaries. It's up to you. Personally, I think strength or duration is the way to go. Now, let's talk about the Helminth builds. Okay, so let me I've got 3 for you. 3 incredibly interesting setups that I've had so much fun playing and testing out. Number 1 is the Tesla Bank Jade. She's perfect for this, perfect candidate. Why? Because you subsume Tesla Novos, and you use the augment Tesla bank. The way this augment works is it will explode when enemies die and it's attached to them. It will explode as a percentage of their health, and if enemies are armor stripped around them, they deal significantly more damage. Now, you see, Jade already does poppy pop, right? Like explosions. She already does that. So this just adds to those explosions. Ophanimize armor strips enemies. The more strength you have, the quicker this happens. And when you are flying around, floating around like a little swan, okay, you're going to be doubling up on the explosions with Judgement. Although we do subsume over R1, which can be switched around if you wanted to. Let's say you wanted to maybe subsume over her 2. I know that sounds like blasphemy, but it does work. I'll explain later. It is an incredibly fun and satisfying nuke build to play. I can highly recommend if you want to just pair more explosions on top of more explosions. This is what the entire build would look like. We have arcane concentration and we have augmented on. You can switch out brief respite for something else if you wanted to. I only added here because yeah, I just did. We have 175% ability range and 200% ability strength with molt augmented. So you're not having crazy amounts of strength, but it does help because we do use power of 7 too. And overall, it is a very fun setup to play, and you can use any glory setup that you'd like. To be honest, you just need to kill the enemies that are affected by Tesla Bank, and then they will just pop, and you let Ophanim Eyes just do its job by passively armor stripping enemies. Very fun, highly recommended. Then the next setup that I have for you today, okay, this is a bit weird, all right, and it's overkill. Let me just say this before you look at this build, it is very overkill. Here we subsume Tempest Barrage, which is Hydroid subsume. We subsume over our third ability, which is Ophanimize. I know that's weird. You can switch it over to your 2 if you wanted to. You can also use 2 green shards to full armor strip with this ability. Now, I did pair the Impetus and Encumber combo through Glory, but here is the source. If you want to make this build feel a whole lot better, there is something that I don't think anyone has spoken about before, and it's caught my attention as of late. Kind of tempted to make a video. It's this right here. Tempest Barrage is a one-handed action that can be performed with no interruption. What does this mean? This means that you can shoot Glory while casting Tempest Barrage. And you kind of want to spam this ability, no? That's kind of like the whole point. So let me provide new tech. Change your keybinds to an easier button to reach or a mouse button if you're on mouse and keyboard. On console, I have no idea if this is going to apply, so this may or may not apply to you at all. This means instead of reaching over and tapping your 3 the whole time if you're on mouse and keyboard, and if you subsume or Ophanimize, you can just click your mouse button away and never let go of firing Glory. That is why it's called Rain Terror. It's kind of nice. It feels weird, but it just feels like you're maxing out things that don't need to be maxed, but it's just over the top and it's just fun. You can get huge amounts of viral and corrosive spreading incredibly fast with Tempest Barrage and Viral Tempest as well. It allows you to do so much damage. It's just different and it's fun. So if you'd like to give it a try, this is what the build looks like right here. I do have Arcane Hotshot on to give that extra crit because I use the Encumber build and we use Arcane Impetus. It just works. Everything with this just works, and it works damn well. Remember, because Glory does heat damage and also her first ability does heat damage as well, Arcane Hotshot works too. So it's pretty damn powerful. Okay, now we move on to the last setup for today's video. I am so excited to show this to you because this one has surprised me beyond like this. I've fallen in love with this. This is going to like one of my top 5 favorite builds just for fun factor. And it's very selfish. It's a very selfish playstyle. But what you do is you subsume over your second ability with Raw. I know, but let me explain. Let me just give you the source. Here we make use of Shade. You see where I'm going with this? We use Arcane Crepuscular. Do you get me? The critical multiplier does indeed work with her alternate fire, and you could spam your first ability and the alt fire. The alt fire does not break invisibility. Do you get what I'm saying? Literally a 2-button build. The biggest problem with the setup is your energy sustain. Admittedly, I do feel like you kind of need to ramp up in Steel Past with this. You kind of have to wait for the Xmas units to come through because they drop a lot of health orbs, which allows equilibrium to proc. If you can find a way to get better energy sustain and make this, you know, a lot better, it's great. Although I have updated the build so that it has much better energy sustain, which should see you quite far. But now here's what makes this so crazy with Crepuscular. We use secondary Innovate, and when you hit those red crits, I'm telling you, like, you can sometimes get like 1,000,000 damage on an alt fire. And because you're spamming alt fire, you are going to be draining energy, but you're going to be doing so much damage. It's just so satisfying. Why have I never discovered this before? But anyway, let me show you the build here. I've yapped on in this, like, about this long enough. So here is the Stealth Bomber. You see what I said about Stealth Bomber in the beginning of the video? This is what you're looking at right here. I did opt for Fleeting Expertise. You can drop this. You can try other means of energy sustain if you wanted to. But here we cover 175% range, 160% efficiency, only 190% duration, but you do have Arcane Concentration as well. And you can use the Grimoire. Do not forget that. You have 30% bonus ability strength and 3 times final critical damage multiplier. This is the setup that I have way too much fun in, and I can highly recommend you give this a go. Raw allows your alt fire to do so much damage. It's just great. It's lots of fun. For my final thoughts on Jade, she is a fantastic Warframe that, to be honest, I overlooked her. I just thought she was like meh, but I was wrong. Okay, I was very wrong. She is bloody fantastic, and she is very useful in many cases. She's also used for arbitration. She's useful in team compositions. She has a fantastic kit. You also, with regard to the builds that I've showcased today in this video, you actually don't need to go all in this. Sometimes you can make a gun buffing build where you don't even use Glory if you wanted to. You could zoom over her 4, even though that may seem like heresy, but you get the idea here. You can do what you want. She's incredibly flexible, and she's just an easy Warframe to play. Seriously, she's an easy Warframe to play. If there's any build out of this video that I'd recommend that you give a try, it's the Stealth Bomber. Please, just give it a go. Seriously, just give it a try. Trust me. If you enjoyed this video, could you smash that like button and subscribe? It helps me. Thank you so much. And as always, a massive thank you to our channel members. You guys are absolutely amazing. Thank you for your support. I will see you all in the next video.